Digital is often a slippery qualifier. Does it refer to medium or content or both? For my purposes here, I am going to take the digital in digital learning to refer to content. Digital learning is what happens to our students when we enable them to do things digitally. I will be agnostic about how that learning takes place. It could be through old-fashioned methods, even reading. It could be through digital media. Most likely, it will be a mix of various media and methods. But what I want to concentrate on is the skills and capabilities we seek to transfer and build, especially the specificity of those skills. The problem here is that nowadays the technologies of knowledge change quickly. As an example, I'm showing you images of some social media possibilities over the last 20 years. Illustrating this with Open Diary and Blogger as text-based platforms from the late 1990s, then going on to Twitter, still text-based but in 21st century size bytes, and then Instagram with its emphasis on images. These kind of changes bring up the question of how much we want students to learn skills tied to one particular piece of software, and how much do we want to equip them with skills which will enable them to accommodate the inevitable changes which will come. I want to suggest that the kind of problem-solving skills which are needed to deal with new and changed tools should almost always be a part of what we try to teach, but that their importance varies depending on the immediate skills being learned. To explain this in more detail, I want to make a distinction between digital tools, which are really tools. They help us carry out tasks more efficiently and effectively without changing our relation to the task. And tools which are thinking aids. These ones change the tasks we carry out and change the way we think about the tasks. As an example of a tool, let's think about bibliographic software. Handling references and citations is a skill we expect of our students. Showing them how to do this using a digital tool makes the task much easier. But switching to the digital method does not impose a new analytic lens on data. And in such a situation, I think that teaching specifics only is sensible and appropriate. For several years now, I have run workshops to help research students get started with Zotero. Here's a clip from a video I made to publicise this activity. You can also use Zotero to store notes about what you're reading, and this handles the missing quotation problem. Here I am trying to type in a quote that I more or less remember, which talks about what languages can and must express, but I know I made a note of this in Zotero. Here I am typing the words language and express in the Zotero search box, and I retrieve the note that I made. I can copy that complete text to insert in my document, check that I know what the source of the quote is, back to Word. I'll paste in the text that I need, and I'll do insert citation, start typing the name Jakobsen, which was the source, and I choose that, the citation is added, and the whole job is complete. I've shown you how bibliographic software can help you deal with referencing problems. I used Zotero, but that's not the only solution. Monash students have free access to a package called EndNote, and there are even other possibilities. You can see I'm not completely exclusive here. I acknowledge that there are other packages available, but I certainly don't include any teaching about how a database is structured, even though underlyingly Zotero is a database, because thinking about data structures is not part of the learning here. On the other hand, I have toyed with creating a module on when a database, in the sense of a full database management system, is a useful tool for researchers in the humanities. It's still work in progress. In that context, I would want to try to convey some of the general principles of how databases are structured and how that affects the way we think about our data. Another example of this more conceptual and therefore more generic approach comes from a unit I taught recently on computerized text analysis. I thought it was important to include material about some machine learning techniques in this course. And here we can see that there are various levels of specificity that could be relevant. One very specific level is the underlying algorithms. I didn't teach anything about them because I'm certainly not capable of doing that. But I did teach something about the conceptual basis of the methods, as well as about specific software implementations. I wanted my students to understand why topic modelling can reveal patterns in texts that we might not be aware of otherwise. Why the method can do that, and why the fact that this can happen forces us to think about the data, the texts, in a different way. But I also wanted students to be able to use the method for themselves, even if that just meant being able to run a script, as in the screenshot, after changing some variables in it. To return to the social media tools I showed earlier, I teach an introductory digital humanities unit where we require students to present their assessed work in a WordPress-driven blog or website. I don't think that there's a lot of dispute now that being able to present arguments in an online format, including being able to integrate various kinds of media, is a valuable skill for students today. But again, there are different levels of specificity to consider. The affordances of hypertext and multimedia open up rich possibilities, and part of the learning is reflecting on how these possibilities can be used. This is again learning at a conceptual level. But we also have to ensure that students who may come with Instagram as their only experience of producing online content can engage with these conceptual questions. In order to make that possible, using a specific platform is a necessity. I don't want to have to teach HTML from scratch to a class of arts students. But very rewardingly, the two lines of thinking converge with some students who can imagine things they would like to do, but also find that they are pushing up against the limits that WordPress imposes on their creativity. Another plan not yet implemented is to include a lab session in one of my digital humanities classes, which would be called something like How to Survive in a Stack Overflow Forum. The idea here would be to start with a tool with which the students had already become familiar, set them a task with it which brought up a problem, and then have them think through the process of trying to solve that problem. Were there help pages for the software? And did they have a fix? Of course, I would have checked that this didn't exist first. How do you formulate a query which will recover useful information addressing the problem? How do you navigate the sometimes unfriendly atmosphere of forums like Stack Overflow and make sense of the fantastic information available there? I have the sneaking feeling that this would result in the most profound kind of digital learning, making students confident that they could build on the skills they have to handle new problems, where new problems can include dealing with software upgrades or switches to new apps. But at that point, I'm also wondering whether this goal is very different from the kind of goals we have in our teaching more generally. Should we even be thinking of digital learning as a fundamentally different kind of learning?